We have Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane, who is known. I believe that she need no introduction to us. She is our public protector, or she is even our protector, because we are the publics. And we are so grateful, Mama, to have you tonight to come and share your awesome time with us. And we know you have a lot to do. The assignment you carry for this nation is so great. And we can only imagine it is you in that position. And there is no one here who is in this platform who is a former public protector. So therefore, we have no idea whatsoever the workload you have, but we really appreciate your time, and we know you have valuable information to share with us in this platform.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you, program facilitator, Mr. Sinwamali, and the chairperson of the Midrand Local Economic Empowerment, Mr. Tulani Mabena, fellow panelists, Dr. Msimang and Reverend Chikane, and everyone who may be following this dialogue. Good evening. I would like to thank the Midrand Local Economic Empowerment for extending an invitation to me to take part in this conversation. And my office appreciates this kind of platform as they help us to get more people to understand what we do, thereby making our services accessible to the public as envisaged in section 182.4 of the Constitution. I wish to start by conveying my sincerest sympathies to the family, friends, and colleagues of Mr. Kimi Makwetu, who passed away yesterday while still holding the position of Auditor General. His passing is a huge loss to the fight against corruption in this country. It was through this office's audit work that malfeasance in the public sector was detected and brought to the surface. May his gentle soul rest in eternal peace. Coming to the issue at hand, I would like to preface my input with this brief true story. As we speak, the normal way of life in the impoverished community of Kalpan village near Itsuseng Township outside Mafikeng in the northwest has been interrupted. This is as a result of torrential downpours that we have seen across the country over the last few days. When it rains heavily, the access to roads leading in and out of that community gets flooded and muddy. As a result, the cars of teachers that work at the local school cannot enter the village, and the nurses and everyone cannot. The school bus that ferries learners to that place also cannot get into the place. In other words, teachers can't work, and even the health workers. But things didn't have to be this way, because nearly 10 years ago, the Mafikeng local municipality put out a tender and appointed a contractor for the access road to be tarred. The contractor moved on site, installed the caps on the parts of the 3-kilometer stretch, and left the site, leaving the road as dusty as ever. For that, the contractor invoiced the municipality and pocketed a total of 4.4 million. So this was made possible by a false certification from the erstwhile head of Department of Roads and at the municipality, a certain Mr. Kembo, that the services had been rendered and that the invoice was fair and reasonable. I think it's a lot of places where this is happening. We see in other places where they will allege schools have been built, and the municipalities or provincial government has been built. In fact, that the monies should be paid, whereas the services have not been rendered. So in February, we directed the municipal manager, to conduct an analysis of the work that still needs to be done on that road and determine the cost thereof and the timelines within which that can be completed. He must also provide us with an action plan on the completion of that particular road. He must further determine the amount which was overpaid to that contractor and initiate legal process to claw back the amount which was paid. But then as well, we've referred the matter to the Hawks so that they can investigate this criminal conduct of corruption. So the entire community is subjected to this brutal violation of their rights, and yet the perpetrators of this improper prejudice have smiled all the way to the bank. And if this is not enough, the taxpayer must now reach deep into their pockets to pay again for the completion of this road. And unfortunately, these are the daily living of our South African communities in various parts. So we often refer wrongly to irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure or maladministration in the public sector as corruption. And yet the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act, which we call it PRECA, in terms of which my office has the power to investigate corruption, defines corruption for us. The definition is quite long and wordy. However, in essence, PRECA says corruption involves the influencing of a party by another to make a dishonest decision for gratification. The key words here are influencing, decision, and gratification. This definition is consistent with that of Transparency International, according to which corruption is the abuse of the entrusted power for private gain. So this is what happened. For instance, if a motorist who commits a traffic offense and pays a traffic officer a bribe to avoid a penalty is guilty of corruption, and so is the traffic officer. So in this instance, we do have the corrupter and the corruptee. So both these players perpetuate this crime. So in South Africa, we must indicate that we have fairly a strong safety net to cushion us from corruption. Leading the way is the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. And we also have various provisions in the Constitution which provides for how the public procurement issues and how the issues of whistleblowing, the Public Finance Management Act, and we also have the Prevention of Organized Crime legislation, which are all legislation which are there to make us to report on this and to deal with the scourge of corruption. Apart from obvious forums such as the judiciary, parliament, the prosecution authority, including the asset forfeiture unit, the witness protection unit, and the police, including the Directorate of Priority Crime Investigation, which we call the Hawks, there is a public protector which investigate maladministration and corruption. And maladministration will include your abuse of power, abuse of state resources, issues relating to undue delay. And we also have the Auditor General, the SIU, and various commissions which investigate such. In addition to this, a free press plays a critical role as well in shining the spotlight on all the scheming that take place under the cover of darkness. So at policy level, we all know that South Africa has what we call the National Development Plan, which also clearly spells out what the country needs to deal with the corruption. And the NDP recognizes a law which is called PRECA, which I've mentioned up there, the Protected Disclosure Act, which is also central in combating corruption. It also recognizes the public protector and the SIU as key players against corruption. So on paper, we have all this which we need to disrupt corrupt activities, both in the private and the public sector, but also nab the perpetrators, prosecute and convict them. So therefore, there's different roles in this setup, where we have the law enforcement, which will have to deal with the issue of crime, But what the public protector does is we uncover this maladministration and we deal with the root causes, and then we recommend remedies on how this can be dealt with and to prevent a repetition of the same thing. So from our side as public protector, we play this role in terms of the constitutional and our legislative mandate. So should we come across evidence which points to possible corruption, because corruption is a criminal conduct, we do, in terms of the Public Protector Act, refer such to the necessary law enforcement agencies, most of the time to the Hawks, and also we do recommend or refer such information to the prosecuting authorities. So corruption is a demon that must be flushed out of the system, both in the public and the private sector, and failing which this is weakening our democracy and our economic development, whilst inequality, poverty, and social division and the environmental crisis is worsened as we see the repercussions of corruption. Therefore, working with civil society also will help us as the public protector, because that's where we will also appreciate them to assist us to implement the remedial actions which we have recommended where the state functionaries are not doing that. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Does the role of the public protector is it only limited to the public space, or can her recommendations also be made against the private sector? And if not, what can be done? Because if these two are dealt with in isolation, in that Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane must only work or must only deal with corruption within the public sector, and then the private sector is left for a different platform, the challenge then becomes that sometimes the conclusions are compromised because it's two separate individual bodies that are dealing with. So now people want to understand, in your recommendations, how far can you go in recommending or remedial actions in the public, in the private sector as well, in the same way that you do in respect of the public sector?
As I said in my opening, that there is a corruptor and a corruptee. So the example which I've mentioned is a report which we've issued against that Mahikeng local municipality. And as I'm saying that the conduct of the public official, because in terms of the constitution, the public protector investigate or public administration. Therefore, if public funds are involved, definitely we will have a finding against the public officials. And in this instance, hence we are saying the matter is also referred to the Hawks, especially to deal with the criminal conduct against this private individual. We don't have a jurisdiction over private individuals or private companies, but then if state money is involved, definitely we do have a remedial action to deal with the public officials, but alternatively as well, how can we recover the monies which have been wasted or corruptly paid to private individuals? So that then is the role which is taken over by the law enforcement agencies. That's why it's very critical that we work very closely together as these institutions, either your constitutional institutions. Hence, we are also working very closely, like for instance, with the Auditor General. In this particular instance, we also check what were the audit outcomes in that particular municipality or state institution, and we use it then also in our recommendations when we make recommendations. Unfortunately, the only institution which deals with corruption or such irregularities in the private sector, you'd find most of the time is the Competition Commission, where they have been reported or they have then committed such issues of collusion and that corruption, but it ends there. And another forum is then for a crime which is investigated by the law enforcement agencies. When it comes to the issue of the public protectors investigation and the delays, you know, we've got 19 offices countrywide, and thanks for just asking that. I would want to clarify that the office, we've got 9 provincial offices, and there is 9 provincial public protectors who are representing the public protector in the provinces. So when people are complaining, those are lodged in those provinces, and the ones which affect national departments, state institutions, or universities and statutory bodies are reported to the national office. And also they are dealt with when we register them, we assess them, they are allocated to investigators who will investigate those matters. So as an office, we have complaints relating to service delivery related matters. Service delivery is those relating to access to or the delay to process your ID, birth certificate, unemployment insurance fund, and all those. Then you've got the conduct failure investigations, which relates to your corruption, issues of procurement irregularities. And most of the time, the service failure investigations, we resolve them within a year. And also those ones constitute more, like around 90% of our work. And they don't even reach my desk because they are resolved by these experienced investigators throughout the country. The ones which will reach my desk are where we are issuing reports, and they relate to conduct failure. And those ones we take up to 2 years to investigate and finalize. There are various issues which impact on the time frame. It might be the delay to respond by those state institutions. It might be the workload of the officials, because you would find that an official has more than 20 such complex matters they are investigating. And again, as I've indicated, that the very same National Development Plan said the public protector should be fully capacitated or be well resourced. Unfortunately, we are also then facing the very same challenge of our budget being cut, and we are being told they are cutting the budgets on the compensation of employees. How are we going to be able to deliver our services? Therefore, that leads to the public being impacted. And remember, the very same public who might not have the resources to take the state institutions to court. And what it does to the SMMEs, I mean, I'm glad this is organized by small businesses and those business forums, is that you'd find that a lot of business people are impacted by the conduct of the state, because they will be rendering your services. They are not paid on time. Some of them end up being desperate, and some public officials will want ipayola, which they call bribe, for them to pay the invoices. So you see that issue is it's just a repetition of corruption. And unfortunately, if then you find the very same SMMEs out of their desperation paying this bribe, and on the other hand, these government officials knowing that they won't pay the invoices because they know they'll be paid. So it's just a cycle of corruption, which, besides talking about the billions which we know have been wasted in the system through corruption, but also this societal challenge. So I hope I've addressed the issue of capacity and the financial constraints which we're having. Therefore, as a country, if we are serious about dealing with corruption and also uncovering corruption, we should be funding such institutions properly. Hence, I'm saying also working with civil society where we have remedial actions which are not implemented, and we are also taken to court on review because people do not want to be held to account. And at the end of the day, we are still perpetuating the very same issue of people not wanting to be held to account. So I hope I've addressed the challenge or the questions which you've asked.
Yes, I believe so. I believe so for moving forward, and I think we are better cleared on that. And you touched a very important issue there around collusion. And you mentioned that, I remember it's one question that came off this platform earlier, I think some few hours ago when we were preparing for this, and you know, it was that we know that we are yet to see, maybe we stand to hear or to be corrected by hearing from you, we yet to see the public protector's recommendations being used to take legal actions against even the private sector. Because most of the time when we talk of, especially among the giants, and you know, we had a bigger one even in 2010 for prior to 2010 for construction of the World Cup stadiums and so forth. And you hear all this that is happening, and we have heard many people are complaining, especially our small scale farmers, and they complain that these people, collusion is so real that they can manipulate how you can lose all your stock. But now, we in order to dominate the market, but we want to know, can you also, while you are, because of course, when you are investigating corruption within the public sector, you do come across the wrongdoing of the private sector, which influenced that corruption in the public sector. And of course, like you are saying, that the scope, your scope then will be in making those recommendations and remedial actions and so forth. Is there no room within, you know, the law that you can make recommendations for criminal investigation against the private sector based on the evidence that you have collected? And we say this, we are highlighting also, like we said, the collusion, for example. And we never heard of any of, you know, maybe directors of companies facing legal actions for what they've done, especially in collusion and related. And we are yet to know. So now, what does it mean to the public that you protect? Does it mean that when a public reports such to you, it will lead you to investigate, make recommendations, and it only limits the, let's say, depending on this, the sphere of government that is compromised here? Does your recommendations only end there, or can they also be used, maybe presented to maybe the Hawks or the South African Police Services to say, this is our investigation, the following is evidence, you guys need to run with this because it's there? We say this because it's the publics that are affected the most. And when they report to you, they want to see actions. And they want to see actions. Like, for example, if a person goes and says, I have applied for this opportunity and this how much I was compromised, a public official told me I must do this and I said no, and therefore the same project or tender that was due to me, I believe, was now given to somebody else. That somebody else benefited unlawfully because this one was supposed to. So to what extent are you able to work hand in hand with, for example, the Hawks or SAPS in making sure that even those in the private space can be brought to book based on your recommendation, or your recommendations only end in the public sector? I think it just needs to be clear there.
Thank you, Mr. Sinwamali, Program Facilitator. Definitely, there are various reports which we've issued, just the Public Protector, where we had findings against state institutions, and where we are picking up that there might be a criminal conduct, we refer those to the Hawks, DPCI, or as well we bring to the attention of a National Prosecuting Authority. As I indicated, that the Public Protector Act is very clear that during the investigation or after the investigation, where we pick up that there's any criminal conduct, we refer that to the law enforcement. There are several reports which we've issued. I mean, when you mentioned the 2010 collusion story, which that is purely the issue which the police and the Hawks were supposed to investigate. And after, especially the Competition Commission has pronounced on that matter, unfortunately, again, that's what is lacking on the law enforcement side. But then as the Public Protector, you know, the CX report, the ABSA matter or the Bangkok matter, which one to find has in paying even personal costs. But the issue was we were focusing on the 600,000 pounds, which was paid by the country, state resources, to this private company to investigate and recover all those apartheid loot. But then before money, we also picked up that there is this money which was then given to Bangkok and then later which became ABSA. So in our recommendation, when we were saying, because SIU in the past, there was a proclamation by the former president to say, can you investigate this matter? Unfortunately, there was no report, but then the issue was it might lead to the run on the economy or cause problems for the country. So those are some of the examples. A lot of our reports, when we issue them, we do recommend that the Ox should investigate. I mean, the recent matter, relating to the asbestos case, we made recommendations. We even referred the criminal conduct to be investigated by the Hawks. And in that matter also, even the Commission of Inquiry requested our report and the evidence which we've acquired during our investigation. And that has also, yes, the Hawks was investigating the matter, but at least there is that evidence which they will be able to use in a court of law for a conviction. I mean, we've got other reports, like even the very same Friede matter, which there was an issue that there was no finding against the politicians, but the finding against the officials, which was even the investigation which took place prior, was that the HOD, as the accounting officer, there were financial misconduct, which should, a criminal matter should be investigated, and that should be taken into account. But that does not end there, because it will also then lead to the prosecution of the companies which were involved in that particular space. Therefore, I must indicate that if people can just read our reports, and even the very same law enforcement agencies take the evidence which we've relied on, because as an institution, we don't rely on hearsay or information out there. But then our reports are evidence-based, because once you have evidence, then you can prove any criminality in any court of law. So there are a number of reports where we've referred to the Hawks or the police, and indeed, when they follow up on those, they can have a case where they can convict whoever is implicated.
I don't know how best, maybe we should put it, but I believe you have an understanding of what the publics out there do want to hear, which will also help even the accounting officers to gain confidence and know that we are independent. Once you say this is policy, allow me to execute it. Little of interference. What is your take on that, Advocate?
Mr. Sinwamali, I think, thank you for raising that issue. I think I was very clear that as the public protector, for our credibility and integrity, we deal with evidence. We don't deal with information which is reported out there in the media. And I think even in the Zondo Commission, people might mention one thing, but then you need to have evidence which supports whatever is being said. It's one thing to say Mr. Sinwamali as the politician is corrupt. It's another thing to show me a submission where Mr. Sinwamali has signed and Mr. Sinwamali has instructed Mabena, who is an HOD, and Mabena also coming to me and saying, like for instance, in the Estina matter, if the HOD, after receiving a Section 79 notice, which is giving him an opportunity to give us his side of the story, is saying, Public Protector, I was pressurized by so and so, this MEC, the Premier, to do the following. But the very HOD, as the accounting officer in terms of the PFMA or MFMA, it's very clear. Any instruction must be in writing. You cannot implement an unlawful instruction. So they must then face the brunt of the law. If you do that as an HOD, they know that clearly. We have a report we issued in Limpopo against the one MEC who we had evidence which showed that Bukaba, which showed that she instructed the HOD and even instructed that a certain company be appointed. And indeed, in that report, we had the finding that the MEC has acted unlawfully, and they must claim some monies which were paid to this particular contractor. You understand? So we deal with the issue of evidence. So with Zondo Commission, it's one thing for a person to come and say whatever they are saying. It's another thing for us as investigative institutions, and especially constitutional ones, who operate within the law. We cannot just come about and say there is something which this politician has instructed this one to do. But then on that issue of, for instance, Friede, you know that there is a new investigation where we are checking the role of the politician and what the impact of that was to the beneficiaries. And I must indicate that the very same in Gauteng, the issue of the PPEs, we are investigating. There is an own initiative which we are conducting, and in all other provinces, where we are checking now, irrespective of whether it's an HOD or what role the politician has played. And remember, if we don't find anything which the politician has signed, but then we will find something if, let's say, a family, a friend of that politician is involved in the procurement, because we will conduct what we call forensic investigation. We will have to get their bank records, their telephone records, so that we can check whether there was any link and whether there's any evidence. That's what we do normally. In that matter of Estina, everyone will just, it's just that again, we've explained over and over, but again, it depends on whether people want to listen or don't want to listen, or then they are influenced by the narrative which is there. Because if you check even the provisional report, which was a draft by my predecessor, it was, and even the complaint from the DA was purely focusing on the role of the HOD and the utilization of the resources and the payment of this particular. So if it was very clear that there is also the following evidence which you will have to check on what the MEC, the Premier, and everyone has played. Hence, I'm saying, if you check the Bukaba report of Limpopo and you check the Estina report and the complaint, you will see the difference between the two and the focus. But that doesn't stop us to go and have that own initiative investigation, which might not have happened with this 2013 complaint, which had happened. But now all our investigation, we are now focusing on the role of each and every one, irrespective of whether is an HOD or a political head of that particular institution. But remember, what I need to clarify also is that the issue of oversight, or if let's say in terms of PRECA, the responsibility of also investigating or reporting any corruption, it's only the role of an accounting officer. It excludes the any because it ends with the DG, the HOD. If there's any criminality which is involved, it doesn't include the role of a political head. So I think those are the issues which, as time goes on, will be dealt with on clarifying that whether is that a criminal conduct or it's purely an ethical governance issue which should be dealt with. And again, it's an issue of a political will to make sure that they don't perpetuate the issue of corruption. But definitely our investigations go to that extent. And again, it also impacts on the time we finalize our matters, because then you'd find that some matters take longer because we will have to check on all these aspects which we have to investigate.
Advocate, we don't know to what extent you see it. Maybe you will make a contribution, because we believe that the money that is lost in this corruption, this extent of corruption, is what the nation is crying for in the fight against unemployment, which mainly affects the youth of this country. The youth are the ones that are suffering the most. And these youth and young people are the same that we expect that they will be entering the markets and help create many more employment. So we just want to hear your input in that, because we believe that the money that was lost even just now, because this is still fresh, that was lost now through this PPE procurement in the fight against COVID-19. It's money that could be used greatly to fight unemployment and also to create economic development for the nation to rise up, the economy to be strong and absorb many people in a form of employment, and therefore taxes being returned to the state. What do you think? What is your take on that, and what do you think the public should know about this great problem?
Thank you. On that issue, I think we've mentioned several times as an office that we have initiated these investigations after picking up that there's a lot of reports that there is corruption which might have taken place. So our investigation will uncover that, and fortunately, we are fast tracking those investigations of PPEs, especially and relating to COVID-19. Remember, we were even saying, or even World Health Organization was saying, it's like, committing murder, because the nation is desperate, but then there are people who are abusing the very same resources which should be benefiting the public. But then on that one, again, our investigation will focus on what were the prizes which National Treasury has, because remember, National Treasury issued circulars, and they also indicated what prizes to be charged for those emergency procurement. So where there is an 800% price escalation, which is contrary to what National Treasury said, therefore that will be a finding of maladministration, and we will, as the public protector, make recommendation on that public official which appointed that company, which charged the state so much money. But then also that it's bothering on the issues of corruption by that particular company, because charging the state so much money amounts to that influencing that wasteful expenditure, but then also the issue of corruption. So that will be dealt with by now the DPCI, which is the Hawks, to find that evidence and prosecute accordingly. So as the public protector, we will uncover that, and we will focus on what the law is saying and whether there's any violations of the law. That's where we end and make recommendations to prevent repetition of such or future disasters. Make sure that people who are, or if there's emergency procurement, which we also issued a statement that it doesn't mean that they must not comply to the law. It means they must comply to the law to the T, because it means you must be registered, you must be tax compliant, you must also quote and charge the state on the amount which were prescribed by a National Treasury. But then, yes, I've seen they've withdrawn that circular, which at the end of the day, it's something which they should have made sure that as well from their side, whatever the state or the issue of emergency procurement is concerned, because once the amount is exceeding a certain figure, that state institution must report that to National Treasury and the Auditor General. So unfortunately, in this particular instance, there was that gap. But then I think our recommendations will say, for future, this is what it's supposed to be done, and there should be no repetition of that.
You mentioned that budgets are a limit, and also we want to understand, we know that the president had said that even investigations around COVID-19 procurement must be fast-tracked. So the delays on your side, is it a matter of capacity of resources, financial resources that are not being there, and maybe so that we don't hear it from a third party? What is the delay then? Maybe before you go, advocate, what is the delay? Because we were expecting those things to be finalized within a month. People should know that this, because if it takes years, it's very impossible for even the states to recover those monies. Advocate, please, over to you before you leave.
The issue of our investigations, especially this relating to COVID-related investigations, we have a project team which is investigating that. I mean, you remember there's that issue of bait breach, border fence. There's issues relating to the procurement of PPEs, which we are investigating in all the provinces. So on that, we are fast tracking our investigation irrespective of our financial constraints. There are those reports which we'll be issuing, which are advisory in nature, especially when we were visiting the hospitals and recommending quick wins on how, let's say, Department of Health can improve, or Department of Education in various schools. But then when it comes to the issue of corruption and conduct failure, we also depend on the very same law enforcement agencies, because we will have to cooperate with your Financial Intelligence Center for them to also assist us with certain information so that we can have leads. We also depend on how quick we get the responses from the banks, the responses which, when we receive, how do we analyze that particular evidence and have a concrete finding? I think if you can check the reports which were issued by SIU, there were general reports which says possibly here this was not complied with, this was not complied with. We would want to issue reports which will have evidence linking a person to that maladministration or corruption. So we are intending to, at least by the end of this financial year, which is around March, we would be issuing our reports as far as the COVID-related corruption or alleged corruption is concerned. But I must indicate that, unfortunately, with the public protector, unlike the law enforcement agencies, I think you've seen the president has appointed a team of ministers to unlock financial challenges for your SIUs, NPAs, and the Fusion Center institutions. But then for the public protector, remember, we are reporting to National Assembly, and that's where we have also engaged the portfolio committee and the speaker to request their intervention on issues of our capacity constraints. Yes, we receive our budget through the Department of Justice as the department through which our budget is appropriated. But then that's all that can happen. And we can only plead with the Department of Justice on whatever resources they have, they can avail to the public protector. And I think we've seen the Commission of Inquiry has received an additional 63 million through this particular process. But for us, our budget for compensation of employees has been cut by about 16 million. So again, it's taking us 100 steps backward. And those are the things which the public, you should know that within the various limited resources, we will try our best to deliver whatever we can deliver. But then where we fail, unfortunately, it will be an issue that justice denied is justice delayed is justice denied, because our reports were going to assist and strengthen the constitutional democracy, or strengthen and the issue of making sure that whoever is implicated, whoever is corrupt, there is evidence and indeed there will be a conviction, instead of just reporting that so and so is corrupt, but then it just ends there. Our reports, when we issue them because we have evidence. We don't just mention that people might have been involved or there are findings against them because of any improper conduct, but it's because it's evidence-based. So I think that's what I will leave you with, and say institutions like yours who have your own business forums and the graduates and everyone should know this is the predicament we are facing as the constitutional institution. And unfortunately, if we are not properly funded, we will be facing this challenge. We won't be able to deliver our mandate as we would want to deliver our mandate. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Advocate, for your valuable input. We are really so blessed to have you tonight to come and spend this time with us. We know you are busy even now, you are moving, but you gave us attention, you gave us all this time, and we want to say that we are in support of your office, and we want to make sure that your office is never compromised, is not influenced politically to also impact negatively on the people that you are supposed to be protecting, especially us, the public. And there is also a word from the Midrand Local Economic Empowerment to say they've actually extended an invitation to your CEO to join us on the 10th of December to discuss possible, opportunities that benefits SMEs. And so they said, no, we respect that she's going and we will not have an opportunity before she leaves. Maybe as you leave, kindly assist us in making sure that the CEO comes, because some things may require the CEO to come and discuss, not you per se, because we know that what we were engaging today has to do with you and you are the right person to actually give these answers. But please, with all humility, we are asking that maybe the CEO can join, and that is the the special request from the Midrand Local Economic Empowerment. And just in case you got cut off while you are going, we really appreciate your time. We appreciate the time you have spent with us in giving this clarity. And you, like we said, that your assignment is so big and is broad, and sometimes people do not understand how far you can go, and you are the right person to come and give these answers. Thank you so much. We wish you all the best in the assignment you execute in favor of us, the publics that you are protecting, and we know that the publics, through various progress and developments, can gain more confidence in your office. All the best, even in the meetings that you're going to be attending, and we hope you will be connected, listening until we close, because we'll be closing very soon. That has been Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane, Public Protector of the Republic of South Africa. We are grateful for her time.